Hi guys, welcome back to another CDH Lunch and Learn. I'm Darren, the Community and Memberships Coordinator here at CDH. If you've never been to one of our Lunch and Learns before, it's a series where we support founders by giving them the skills and the knowledge that they need to scale. Obviously, product development is a really, really important part of that. I think I always see founders find themselves oscillating between growing their business and refining their product. And we're really, really excited to have Chaz Mee in today, who's an expert in the product side of things. He's got lots of experience working on some really cool products across the world, currently VP of product at Keep Labs. And fun fact, Chaz has also run a really cool product development course for General Assembly once upon a time, and he achieved a really, really high NPS score, which is always a good badge of honor to hold in that field. Yeah,
I'll take all the wins.
Yes, sure. But yes, welcome, Chaz.
Oh, thank you.
Just tell the audience a little bit about what product development really means to you.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, product development means putting something into people's hands that empowers them to do something today that they couldn't do tomorrow. That's really for me what it is. And that's true regardless of what industry you're in. So
yeah, I think so. And it's so it can often feel like you're building in a vacuum sometimes, right? It just sort of echo off the walls and find that process of iteration really hard.
It can be a very lonely journey.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. So I'll get into the product presentation and we'll start there. Okay, so the name of our workshop has been The Art of Being Wrong, aptly named.
Yep.
So I'll let Chaz sort of take it away from there.
Cool.
How does embracing being wrong actually make your products better, faster?
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is so hard because you're trying to match so many different things. You're trying to find the right problem to solve. And that's often very tricky to sort of figure out what is the actual problem. You're trying to match that with, not just any solution, but something that does it in a different or unique or novel way to get people to switch. And, you're trying to do that for enough people, right, to make it meaningful to actually build a business, right?
Yeah.
And it's tricky. And I think being wrong is not about just failing. It's essentially you have to remove all of the things that are the wrong things directionally, because at a certain point you need to sort of commit to a direction, and you're not always going to be 100% right, but you do need to at least sort of a big swipe kind of go, is this the right value proposition I'm delivering to people? Because when you commit to it, it is a journey, and you have to kind of go on that journey, and you can be wrong many times over. And the thing you hope you're wrong on is more the feature sets or the sort of little details, and not wrong on the big thing. Because when you're wrong on the big thing, then you have to pivot. Pivots are expensive.
Yeah.
I know that from personal experience the past year. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, cool. I'll let you drive if you want to sort of dictate the pace. But
I thought this slide to me is this is the magical unicorn slide. I actually find this very funny as something that's very common in the startup world. Because, and the reason I'm showing it is because I think when you're a startup or, anybody trying to kind of bring some product to market, I think a lot of the times it's talked about in terms of capturing some percent of a market. I operate in a big market, and if I can capture just some small percentage, I'll have something.
See this all the time in VC Tech Breakdown.
Yeah. But the truth is about product is that really markets are really people at the end of the day. They are groups of people. They can be big groups of people or small groups of people. And the truth is, as a startup, what you're trying to do is find a core group of people where that problem you're trying to solve is so painful, so frequently. They have such a big unmet need that they're literally clawing for your solution when you bring it to the market, right? They're almost desperate for it. And the addressable market kind of doesn't matter. And so I always tell people, like, rather than trying to think of bringing products to market in terms of this way, is find a small core group of people who will end up not just trying, but evangelizing your product and move up market from there.
Yeah.
Because that's really how you're going to grow your product. You're going to grow through a core set of users who have a really big pain point, and you hopefully are going to solve that, and they're going to evangelize that up one wall and down the other. And that's really how you come to market as a product.
Yeah. Wow. How do you, because I think most founders would ask the question is like, how do you see that the idea of being able to scale coming from that smaller group of people then? Does it just sort of come naturally, or?
It can, it cannot. I mean, you hope that it becomes more natural, right? Like when you pick a core set of people, let's say 50 or 25, depending on, what your service is you learn a lot, right? You learn a lot about the people. And when you find enough people, 50, whatever, around that number, what ends up happening is that there's this sort of tipping point where if 50 people have that similar issue that you can fix, it turns out that there will be many, many more people who have that similar issue.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the sort of illusion is that you need 100,000 people in order to be like, oh, I'm solving some big problem. The truth is, big problems are solved in very little ways with very few people. And that's how you learn what the problem is and the best way to solve it in the sort of most unique way. And then scaling is really just a matter of, like, that's where fit happens, I think, personally for me, not just product solution fit, but sort of eventual market fit. And scale happens then when you see it. It's something that's happened to me a couple times where you just see it take off. You just see people like start to use it every day. They start to talk about it. They start to give you lots of feedback about it. When people give you tons of feedback about why it is or isn't working, it's an amazing sign.
Yeah.
I think people take it as like, oh my God, we're getting all this bad feedback or whatever. The fact that people are giving you any feedback at all, and most of the users you have on it, the 50, are giving you that feedback often, is incredible, because that is what you scale against.
Yeah, right.
Right? That's the decisions you make about, like, what are the things we need to do now to properly scale? And that's it. So that slide to me is actually the distraction, right? That is not your job as a startup.
Yeah.
I can talk about this really quickly. Might be a bit pedantic, and I think I touched on this, but it's really important, and it comes down to sort of the job to be done for people. I think it's really hard to come to market with a product where people will make room for it in their lives. People are very busy, right?
True.
Like I personally have a kid, I have a job. When I'm not working or being with my kid or doing whatever life stuff, I have very little time, and I'm also trying to pursue my own hobbies, blah, 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 blah. So for something new to enter my mind space and for me to go like, what is this thing? Is this a problem I need solving? Blah, 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 blah. It's actually pretty big. So I think the goal of a product is to really find that niche, that thing where when you present it to somebody, it's almost painfully obvious why they would want to even give it a try, right? And how to fit it into their lives. And so I think, differentiation and uniqueness is totally important, but just trying to get people to put it on their list of like top 5 or 10 things to do today.
Yeah.
Just doing that is kind of a feat.
Yeah. It's like, how much software do you need in your life, right?
There's a lot of software out there, right? There's
way
so
too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This to me, what's his name? Ben Horowitz at A16Z said this thing, I don't know how many years ago, but he said the best software gives its users superpowers. So beyond solving like the basic pain points and stuff, I really love this way of thinking about products ultimately. And, Claude, this is an example of Claude. And Claude obviously is huge and well-funded and blah, 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 blah. But personally, if I think about it, the products that to me really stuck were not just ones that solved some immediate tactical pain point, but they actually opened something up for me. They allowed me to do something that I really could not do before. And with Claude now, if you were to take Claude away from me tomorrow, I think I would cry.
I'm done.
That might be a little extreme, but it is so core now to how I do my job that it is a real superpower in so many ways. And I think that articulation of ultimately like what great software products are is this thing I keep coming back to is what's the superpower that we are handing to people, right? That opens up all kinds of opportunities for them. That is sort of the golden goose, I would say.
Yeah.
So,
and you have some projects here based on Kai, what you guys are working on at Keep.
Yeah, it's stuff for me. It's tools for me. It's things that help me scale. It's things that help me define new features and capabilities. It's things that let me do insights and analytics on the conversations that our product has with customers. It's a whole host of things that I've trained different projects in Kai on how to do. And it's incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people out there do the same thing. And I look at stuff like this and I think it's not that you can't do this in a more manual fashion, but the level of work I can do now is gigantic.
Yeah.
Right. I think
that's the beauty of automation and agents and things like that.
Yeah.
Right?
And I don't think of it as a scary thing. It actually frees me up to do what I think is the important thing.
Yeah. So true. Yeah.
So I wanted to show this slide because this is also from the Jobs to Be Done framework. And for me, I think it represents what kind of you're up against when you bring a product to market. I think we sort of have a product, we're like, oh, this is awesome. And, people seem to love it. And the truth is like, this is actually what's happening when you bring a product to market. There's old solutions and, maybe your solution is better, newer, more unique, different, whatever. It has AI embedded into whatever you say. But there's a lot of stuff out there that people are doing. They still use a lot of really old school stuff, to be honest. And so they're entrenched in these things, right? They've built habits and processes and workflows, et cetera, around these things. And so what you're doing is kind of getting them to switch, regardless of what you're doing. Like, most problems have some sort of solution out there, right?
Yeah.
So you're kind of representing maybe a new way of doing something, different way of doing something. Even Claude is the problems that it solves, are similar to what have sort of existed for a while, but it does it in an incredible way. But there's still a switch and there's this push and pull. And I think when you go to market, I think it's really a good idea to kind of take a framework like this and think about like, what are the things that are relieving someone's anxiety from stepping away from how they currently do something and showing them how to build a new habit and enable some 4x value over what they already do and how they do it. And that's sort of how switches happen. Yeah. And I think a lot of the time, I think we bring product to market without thinking about the kind of the consumer, the customer, the person who you're asking to switch, right? And this is kind of what they're going through. So I
think people are sometimes like, they're already actually pretty close to it because obviously they made a product to solve a problem, right? But it's just like probably going that one layer deeper and just unpacking the psychology behind actually what it takes to switch and push people into pull people into your product.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because people are, in a way, experts at their problem that they have, right?
Yeah.
And so you might be as much or more of an expert, maybe. But the truth is what you're bringing is a novel way to take that expertise and convert it into something quite different that they couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
Right? That's where the magic happens. So. I just want to talk about, the reason I showed the previous slide is because of this. We talk a lot about MVPs in terms of minimal viable product. I actually think there's two sort of roles that this plays when you bring a product to market, or two things you need to think about. One is earning the right to build, right? So why should I build this? Am I ready to build it? Are people ready to see it? Is it the right thing? And then eventually how an MVP is really defined right now, or I hear most people talk about it, is shipping a product with a core set of features, which I actually think of as the core job to be done. So I think of products not as necessarily a core group of features. I think of them as jobs to be done or value propositions that you're shipping. Now, a user interface is a way to access that, but essentially that's what you're doing. And so I think it's important to kind of separate these two things and ask yourself, first of all, what process am I using to go about earning that right to build, right? And then once I earn that right to build, I say, yes, this is the thing. Mm-hmm. I've gotten enough information and I've prototyped and tested enough and learned enough about the problem space. Then what is that thing I'm going to put in their hands? What is that first thing? It might not actually be the Superpower product.
Sure.
Because that's very hard to do and it takes a lot of time. But it might be that one thing that those 25 or 50 people really need that will pull them into your product. And I think it's really important to figure out what that is, because the temptation is to sort of bring something to market and then go, well, when I ship this next thing, that's when it's going to, when I ship this next thing, that's when it's going to happen. And, as you'll see in a second, when you start doing that, you get caught up in sort of this feature cycle where you start to think that it's the next feature. That's what's going to get the traction or the product fit. Yeah. And that's not really it. You might get lucky, but in my experience, that doesn't really happen. You find that magical moment of fit when you give someone that one thing that says this is it. This is what I needed. Yeah. So
cool. Right. What do you see as like the role of, obviously with lots of AI use comes the rising trend of people talking about taste?
Yes.
What do you see as like the role of taste in actually like finding that one thing?
I don't think it's changed. I think when you do this stuff, you always have to use your experience, your good judgment, your sense of taste, your intuition. No matter how much data you have, we have lots of data. Like I look at all the time, but I have to still go in and sort of think about like, well, what am I going to do with it? Like, it's very easy to sort of outsource that to something and say, well, it's telling me X, so I should do Y. Yeah. But it's the Z thing that you really need to get to, right? You need to sort of leapfrog your own thinking. And that's where I think this role has always been. It's always your role, whether you're a VP or product or anything, is to say, so what does this mean and why is this important? And what should we really do about it? And you have to dig and dig and dig and dig. So I would say, don't take the first thing you get back. Like if you use AI, for example, for analysis, don't just take anything you get back on face value. Really dig into it. I remember I did this thing where
such an easy trap to fall into.
It's such an easy trap. I remember I was doing an insights intelligence report for one of our clients, and we had all this data, and you sort of go through this process of saying like, this is sort of what we're trying to find out, and then through that process, I spent over 200 turns going through this, which is a lot of turns working through this stuff.
What do you mean by turns?
Turns. Conversation turns.
Yep.
Whoops, sorry. Conversation turns. Gives me this, I ask this question, I go down this avenue,
right.
And that's not really, that's sort of obvious. Let's go over here and kind of like explore this other thing. And you still need to do that. In fact, you almost need to do it more, because I think if you take something at face value, the danger is you will take the obvious thing or the thing that seems the most logical. And I don't think that the thing that seems the most logical is always where the best insights come from.
That's so counterintuitive.
It's very counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But I can tell you from experience, using all these tools and just doing this, that's a lot of times that's the case.
Yeah.
So cool. I thought I would just dig into something that kind of happened last year and show you kind of the way I think of being wrong.
Sure.
So last year our company was, or a little over a year ago, our company was in quite a different place. We had different type of service. We had hardware. We had software. We were solving some particular problems in a certain space. Space now is pretty much the same, and things weren't sort of quite working for us. And so I went off. I was fairly new. I'd been working with them on a consulting basis for sort of on and off for a year, but I had joined officially sort of a few months before I kind of did all this stuff. And the question was, okay, so we're not quite getting the traction we need. Like, what's happening? Is it this? Is it that? So one of the things I did is the easy thing was to take the app, which was a companion app for our service, and start to run some tests. Start to really figure out, like, do a really deep dive study on what is it that people are getting hung up on. And I used Bolt. Bolt had not just come out, but it had gotten to the point where it was good enough to start doing these. And I hauled off and I did a ton of prototyping and testing with real users.
Right.
And different users. I would ship things to different people, get different results. And I did this for about, I guess, a month.
Kind of similar to like A/B testing.
It was like multivariate testing. Yeah, it was beyond that. It was, and it was live prototype testing. So I was not loading this into usertesting.org or using any of these platforms. For me, it's like I could ship people kind of a real working interface, felt like a product, which is the magic of a lot of these tools now, right? It wasn't just a Figma sort of clickable prototype. This thing worked. All these worked. They had functions, they moved, they navigated, they could do stuff.
And Bolt was the software?
Bolt was the software.
Yeah, cool.
I uploaded real data into it that they could really use that was similar to the data that they would look at as patients. We service patients with rare diseases. And I started iterating on these live prototypes and shipping real URLs to people.
Yeah, right.
Right, in this sort of mobile form that you could do. So you could design it to look like a mobile app, but they could click on a sort of URL.
Super cool. Yeah.
So I went through all this.
I think it's the most common thing nowadays anyway.
Right, exactly.
Most apps are mobile.
Right, exactly. So
on your phone.
So I went through, I started with this sort of version 1, which was a large kind of theory about like simplicity. And then I iterated through all this stuff and finally got to kind of this what we called final design, which was this orientation around, a today and weekly way of understanding how people are tracking and taking their medications. That's what we were doing, is helping people track their medications and take them better on time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you go to the next slide, I did a lot of prototypes. You can see all the things I iterated through. I started to add conversational design stuff into it, right, on the right. This was an amazing exercise. And, I think a lot of these tools out there now, and I did this all by myself, by the way. I did not involve engineering. I did not need to sort of spend their time. They were doing other things that were more important than this.
Sure.
I think we live in a world where you are sort of empowered to be able to go farther faster, which I think is amazing. Like, the fact that I could do this on my own and provide my team with all this analysis on these experiences.
The agency.
Yeah, it was incredible. So, right. So I did all this work and, finally got to this kind of endpoint of saying, if we're going to do this, this is what we should embark on. This is sort of, we were wrong a lot. We were wrong about what we thought was the problems we were solving or the feature sets or whatever. But it turns out we might have been wrong in another way, which is this. So, and this is why I think value propositions are so important and why features are great, but only when you understand the core of the real problem you're trying to solve. And I think like, I was iterating through an adherence problem we were trying to solve. And for a few reasons, market shifting, customers shifting, their taste, their needs shifting, and this happens, is it turned out we were not actually solving, or we shouldn't have been solving an adherence problem. It turned out that was sort of more of a tactical problem. And through the course of the kind of company's history and stuff, and what the market needed, it wasn't as concerned about adherence anymore. And so that's another sort of thing I learned was it's good to be wrong on the feature sets and to figure out the right feature sets, but you also need to be wrong on the larger value proposition that you're offering people. And because if you get behind a value proposition that's wrong or not the right one, and then you just iterate on feature sets endlessly around that, you spend years doing that.
Yeah, 100%.
And you just burn a lot of time and energy. And when we realized this, and this is my signal when I iterate through a lot of different UX, UIs, and features and stuff like that. And it happened here. I got to a certain point. I was like, I'm iterating through a lot of stuff, which is great. I'm trying to find sort of the core set of features. But I have this sort of weird feeling that because I'm doing so much iteration, it's starting to feel like all this stuff is not maybe mattering as much.
Yeah, right.
Like I'm trying to figure out the perfect amount of feature sets. And because I'm trying to perfect that, I'm wondering if something else is going on. And so we stepped back and we had this conversation. And it resulted in this. We said, like, maybe we're solving the wrong problem. Maybe the market doesn't want to solve an adherence problem anymore.
Right. So was it about, when you say adherence, was it about getting the patients to continually adhere to the actual software?
To the medication.
To the medication.
Using the software to take their pills on time. Right. To take their medications on time. Right. To understand when are they taking it? Why are they late in taking it? How do we make sure they're not late in taking all that stuff? That's what.
So that was the original value prop.
That was the original value prop.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, sure.
But as we found, it was just taste for it started to diminish. And for people, I think sometimes what happens is it appears that this is a problem. But it turns out maybe people don't actually want this problem to be solved. And that's a hard pill to swallow because you spend so much time on trying to solve a problem and you get so sort of hooked on trying to solve that problem. You're like, I'm going to solve this problem no matter what I do. And the truth is, and this is something you kind of need to figure out and be honest with yourself about is, do people really want this problem to be solved?
Yeah.
Is it really that important?
Yeah.
And I can't tell you what the magic bullet is, but I do think you have to keep that in your mind. And that's where the value proposition kind of comes in. You have to ask yourself, we had to ask ourselves, should we really be solving an adherence problem? Do they really want that solved?
Yeah.
And if not, you really need to be honest with yourself before you continue iterating on UX, UI, or product design.
So true. So true. Yeah.
So what ended up happening is actually that step back led us in a totally different direction. And it turned out what people needed help with through research and sort of observational stuff and information we already had was rare diseases are essentially an invisible kind of experience to people.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how long ago, this might have been like 10 or more years ago, a lot of healthcare started getting pushed into the home. So that's another kind of insight we found. We started stumbling on all these different insights.
Sure.
Once we stepped away from adherence. And we then realized like a whole host of problems kind of came up because of that. And they lived under this idea of lived experiences, right? And for people with rare diseases. And so we were like, that seems like a really big area. That seems really fruitful. Like we should figure this out because it seems really important to people. People want to talk about it. we saw in Facebook groups, people had self-organized around creating communities to talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it. They
That
were,
does happen.
and it was not just about their medications. It was about a whole host of other things. And we thought, that's really the space we should be in. That's what people want. That's what they feel like is valuable. That's what they're already talking about. It's a
Yeah.
natural behavior that's already happening that we can plug into. I think figuring out how to plug into natural behaviors is really important when you're a startup, because changing behaviors is so difficult. And so we went in a totally different direction. And the direction we went in was sort of based on, let's help people have conversations about what it's like living with PBC, TGCT, Dravet, like epilepsy.
Yeah,
Let's create a product that helps people talk about that, support them in that, and create a space that they can come to. And it seems like a very soft value proposition. And for me, initially, I was like, create a space. Like, what are we talking about? But it turns out like that's what was needed. And we did a really big pivot.
Fascinating.
And and everything comes with its challenges. And, you always are trying to figure stuff out. Sorry. But that was kind of an amazing learning experience. And I've had a few of these learning experiences. So, not that I think everyone should pivot all the time. I always tell people, don't pivot away from, pivot into, right? Don't just pivot away from the thing because it's not working, pivot into something that's working better.
Yeah.
And that's that. So this is my other version of being wrong. Don't just be wrong on the feature sets, be wrong on the big picture stuff where you're man, maybe we're not solving the right problem.
Yeah. But it's so interesting because I think sometimes people, they go into a certain space. Like, for example, you guys went into adherence as the first thing.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, you had some sort of belief behind, people actually need help with that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then it just turns out that you're actually building a community platform, which is so different. But it's just like, it's so fascinating. Even when I see like some early founders that I talked to last week, as I was giving them feedback about their product, they were telling me like, we initially thought this, but the more and more we've been talking to other people in this space, the more we've been realizing that maybe this is actually the real problem. And it's like, do we pivot? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have the answer for you, right?
You don't know. There is no...
That's really your own journey to come to and your own conclusion to make. Yes,
that's the unfortunate truth about the startup world.
Yeah.
But I think it's an important one to ask yourself every once in a while, especially if you feel like you're in sort of constant iteration mode all the time. Some guy, I think he was the founder of Fab. Fab was a company that existed years ago, and they sort of did a couple pivots. And he said something which I found interesting and still stays with me is, you cannot iterate yourself into a value proposition.
Yeah.
Which I just think is such an amazing way of thinking about how you iterate and find the right feature set when really that's not the job to be done.
Yeah.
So just be mindful of that.
Yeah. Because iteration, like in of itself, is sort of addictive sometimes.
It's very addictive. I got addicted. I was like, oh my God, Bolt's amazing. Look at all this stuff I can do. But I just get so hooked and like iterating through all this stuff. And, for our team, like our chairman was like, this is incredible. I was like, yes, isn't it incredible? And then after a while, the sort of incredibleness wore off. And I was like, I'm just creating lots of interfaces at the end of the day. I'm not sure this is valuable anymore.
Yeah.
So,
sure. We'll return to the job of sort of like where you landed after that pivot, basically.
Yeah. So we landed on this pivot and we're still working on stuff. So I can't really show you the current things, but one of the things that I do, and I do for us, and I started teaching actually General Assembly, and it's nothing new. I didn't invent it, but it's jobs to be done, particular job stories. And I've used this as a tool. This is the first thing I do before I do anything, is I write a set of job stories for a potential new feature, capability, whatever you want to call it. And the idea is to really get it like an end benefit that you're delivering to somebody. Because I think what can end up happening is you you start to really talk about feature sets really quickly. You start to prototype and design and all that stuff. And that stuff is very important. But I think in articulating this as quickly as possible and then iterating through that first, I think will help you understand which direction you're supposed to head and where those iterations are supposed to happen. What space are you iterating in, right? It's fine to iterate, but you have to create the right space to do it in.
Yeah.
And job stories and jobs to be done has always been a core tool of mine as sort of a product and experience person. I always go back to it when we're confused or lost or whatever. I always go back to it and say, what
do you mean by job story?
So a job story is a contextual way of understanding not just why somebody would use a product, but in what situation. I find products are very situational. This happened to me years ago where I was working on a transformation project for Con Edison, and we were talking about user stories. And user stories, as a blah, 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 I want to so that I can.
Yeah.
But the problem is it lacks context, right? Like most problems are solved within some context. I am somewhere, I am doing something, right? All people are in the middle of something. And that's when a problem arises. And that's where a solution should present itself, right? Within that context. So job stories give me that context, whereas user stories do not. So if you actually I've seen this before, if you write a user story and you build off of that, because it lacks context, because you're not describing the situation in which you are presenting that solution, when that problem is actually presenting itself as well, you potentially could be building the wrong solution.
You feel like it's because users have so much variance, whereas people doing the same job don't?
Yes. So job stories are not about attributable qualities, right? Like think of Uber, like this is the simplest way I can explain it. So Uber, when it came out, had two different services. It had a direct service, which is, I want to get to the place as quickly as possible, and I'm willing to pay a premium.
Yeah.
And then they had Uber Pool, which is, I am cost sensitive and time flexible. Right? I want to pay as little as possible. I'm willing to bend how long it takes to get there, right? So those are two different kind of jobs to be done. So does it matter that I like vanilla ice cream versus chocolate, or I read the New York Times versus not, or I'm male versus female? Not really. What matters is the cost versus time aspects, right? And that's what they built the two services around. And this is what creates the universality of products and services. So job stories are a way to create both specificity, to say I'm solving a specific job to be done for people, but also at the same time create some universality between these people, creates commonalities. And the danger to me around stuff like personas is you create artificial differences that don't matter. And so you need to be careful around creating artificial differences versus creating common similarities based on the jobs people are trying to do, not necessarily what they look like, what things they might be interested in, what gender they are. Those can be important. I'm not saying they're not important, but those can't be the only things you use as deterministic things to build a product off of. So,
wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I think this is the last slide.
Yeah. So this is kind of my wrap up. I always think, when you take a product to market, whether you're in the MVP sort of do I have the right to build this thing mode, or whether you're in the ship mode, like let's get the first version of this thing to market, is always go niche. Always find that first 25 or 50 people who will not just try it, but evangelize it. I tell this to teams I work with. I say this all the time. For us, how do we make the other solutions feel like a compromise, right? This is something that's, I know people are tired of hearing about Steve Jobs, but when he did a keynote very early on and created this like 2x2 grid. And he said, how do we make every other device in the market feel like a compromise to the iPhone? I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about what you what you ultimately want to do, right? How ultimately you want people to think about your product. You want that to be the first thing they come to, because this other thing is such a compromise, it's not worth it, right? Even if your thing costs a little more.
Yeah.
And the third thing, again, it's you're not talking about a 0.001% of a total addressable market, right? That's not going to get you anywhere. Find actual people who have those actual problems and solve those first. And if you get enough of those people, you will actually build a market, and the market will come.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yep.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. We're going to head into some questions now. So, excuse me, I'm not able to see the chat at this current moment. So let me pull the chat back up.
Cool.
Great. So if anyone has any questions, shoot them through. Otherwise, I have questions, but
Cool.
I'll give everyone some time to send through some questions if they do have any. I just wanted to ask about like the iteration cycle that you did, right?
Right.
It's like, how did you go about, I guess, like getting your customer base to sort of like buy into helping you iterate? Like, were they already heavy users of the product beforehand?
They were users. Some were heavier than others. I tried to find a range. I was interested in people who really weren't using it at all. Whether or not they were heavy users or not, they were all interested in their treatments.
Yeah.
Right. So they were interested. It's first and foremost, when I ask anyone to do anything, my thing is, I'm just trying to help you figure out how to do X better, right? How can I help you better take your medications on time? How can I better help you track your medications? How can I better help you understand how you've taken medications in the past, and how that affects your symptoms that you've had and stuff like that? It's really being empathetic to that first and foremost. And if you're empathetic to their problem and they feel like you're legitimately interested in trying to solve it, they'll likely at least give it a shot.
Yeah.
Right? They might not come back again and again and again and try all your iterations, but because people don't really want to be guinea pigs. But they will help you out if they see it's going somewhere too. If they're like, is this going somewhere? Are you actually going to do this? Or am I just doing this because you're just trying to get to market with a product? Right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the motivation here? Right?
So true. People are pretty good at telling if you have good intentions or not.
They are very good, and they're very sophisticated.
They sure are.
This is not the start of the internet anymore. Like, people have been around products for decades. They understand the stuff. They know the language, some of them. So yeah. And, I was not trying to find 50 people for each round. I was trying to find a handful, like even 5 people is fine, you know? And doing it enough and finding a variety of people who have, a variety of, needs within that kind of problem space, that gave me a way to kind of iterate through and figure out like, well, this is the wrong way of doing it. And this is actually not kind of helping them at all. And they would be very vocal. They'd be like, yeah, this is not what I think about for my day-to-day at all.
I love that.
And you're like, great. That's amazing. Yeah. Let's remove that.
Nothing like some blunt feedback from the real customer, right? I love
blunt feedback. You cannot take it personally. This is not about you.
Yeah.
It's about them.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. I still try not to take it personally. Right? This is not for me. This is not winning awards.
Yeah.
Right? This is for
the
these people.
Yeah. Also, if you do want to connect with Chaz, feel free to drop him a LinkedIn connection. I'll have Angelica drop his LinkedIn in the chat if you do want to connect. But I'll start with the earliest question. So Rachel asked, I guess, like, speaking to your experience in, I guess, like health tech, what's your what's been, I guess, what you've seen to be the go-to-market approach via patients or via doctors and clinics?
The go-to-market approach. Yes, that is tricky. So I will tell you, before this, I didn't really work in healthcare at all.
Sure.
This is my first real deep foray into this stuff. So I didn't really know a whole lot about it. For us, I would say, and in general, operating in this market, it's very heavily regulated, right? You have like HIPAA, you have PII, you have all these things, some of which I didn't know about.
Heavily regulated markets are tricky.
Yeah. I think for us and any startup operating in space, it's a relationship business in a way. You really have to know and sort of, you have to understand the business, which I didn't. And I when I came in, I did understand it because I've worked in regulated markets before. I'm not an expert in them, but for sure, the sort of executives, I would say, in our company, in our small company, have relationships, they've experienced, they have credentials essentially. And that's really what it takes. Like, you need someone with serious credentials to even be able to have a conversation with either a pharmaceutical company or a doctor's network or whatever. Like, they won't talk to you if you're just a bunch of people who have just tertiary experience or have read about it. It's going to be really hard to get into that. So the first thing is find some real experts in that space.
Sort of back you and be part of the project.
Yeah, to be door openers. I would say also, like, our job is not to just holistically disrupt the space. Especially in healthcare, people don't like healthcare to necessarily be disrupted, right? You're talking about people's personal lives. You're talking about healthcare. You're talking about people's actual health. I'm not sure disruption is necessarily what people need in their lives.
Yeah.
What they need ultimately, they need a better quality of life, right? Beyond a cure, at least for people that we, serve, beyond providing a cure, is they need to figure out, how do I realize as best a quality of life with what I have to work with? And how does anything help me achieve that? Whether it's what we do, or whether it's a pharmaceutical company offering a treatment program, or whether it's a doctor offering advice, or whatever it is. And that's ultimately what they want. So, so I would say that first. And then the second thing, there's always a give and take. Because I came in not knowing anything, then I can have a little license to push, right? I can have a little license to go, I'm going to push back on that. And because we have people with credibility, that pushback is not just from outer space, right? I'm not just the crazy person, right? I have some context as to why am I pushing back on this, and somebody within the company can say, here's what this pushback means. Here's what this decision you're about to make means for either our ability to talk to clients, offer our solutions to patients, position that, market it, right? Even present content to people, the way we develop content. So all those things, I get to have license because of this credibility that you build.
Yeah.
And I think that's true kind of almost for anything, is you do have to build a level of credibility. You can't just be the wacky, crazy people all the time.
It's true. Right. It's true. Especially if you are trying to, quote unquote, disrupt or enter a new market.
And it's totally legit. Like, most markets, especially entrenched markets like finance or healthcare, heavily entrenched, heavily regulated, have these sort of this kind of industry wisdom, or this is how we do it stuff. And, as you can see from the past, whether it's a Venmo coming in saying, we can go around that.
Sure.
Right. But you still have to know, like, how to go around it in the right way. You have to be crazy in sort of the right way, right? Or sort of slightly responsible way.
We'll just finish off with the last maybe 3 questions. I'll loop these 2 questions together.
I'll try and be more succinct.
No, all good. It's more about I feel like a lot of people in the audience, and me as well, were pretty interested in like speaking to how you translated your research with users using the jobs description. Like, how do you use real world insights to actually translate into like what they need? Like, is that all just sort of intuition and like this magical chemistry of just like being able to tell, or?
Well, so let me go back to where insights come from.
Sure.
So insights, which is what products are based on, you get an insight for something and you say, here's an insight, right? Something, there's an unmet need, right? Those come from a few places. They are either personal. I or myself or someone I know is personally experiencing this, and I can talk to them, or the insight comes from a day-to-day basis. I experience this every day, often, and it's a huge issue. Yeah. And I experience a lot of friction and anxiety every time I try and solve this problem. It can be observational, where you move through the world, and whether it's buying a car or whatever, you observe this thing coming up over and over and over again, and you try and find out more about it. It can also be market gaps. So you can go do research. You can research 10Ks or whatever and figure out like what's going on in the market.
Yeah.
That's a bit harder. You really have to have experience figuring out how to understand market gaps. I would say like that's almost a skill on itself. But the way that we do it, and it's particular to us, we are a conversational platform now, right? We have conversations with people. They have conversations not with us, with our agentic service, essentially, right? We are, that service first and foremost is emotional. We create a space for them to talk and to hold that space for them to talk about what's important to them. And then what we try and do is use that to say, well, what does that mean? When they say X, what does that really mean? And how do we kind of interpret that into something they need further that we're missing? And then once I figure that out, I turn around and articulate it into a job story. The job story is kind of an art and science at the same time. There's no analytical really way to do it.
Yeah. Like, how does it fit into like if you were trying to craft an ICP? Would it just be using, I guess, the framing of the actual job to craft that ICP?
So here's something I did recently, right, where the jobs are coming. So I recently did something. We had these findings or insights about something in our platform that people needed. It's a big thing, and it seemed something like, oh, this could be a superpower. Like this could be something that we could be really known for really well. People are sort of doing it, but not like this. And it doesn't seem like there's one single great solution out there yet. Sure. People are sort of touching on it. So first I define what the problem is, right? And that's a narrative thing. I get good at articulating what is this problem, right, or the opportunity we're trying to create. And then I ask myself, well, why? Why is it important to solve this problem? And I go through that. I write lots of stuff. You have to get good at writing. You have to get good at telling that story of why it's a problem, right? That's a skill. Once I do that, I have trained my job story assistant in Claude through many, many iterations of writing job stories based on those two things. So I tell it what the problem is, and I tell it why it's important, what people are going, some other context. I have it write me job stories. We go through a bunch of iterations around sort of pulling on the job stories, probably like 1 to 3.
Sure.
I then, for a recent thing, I took those job stories. I took the problem we were trying to solve, why it was important, and I went to Claude and I said, here is this. Let's start to prototype what that might look like. And it did it.
Yeah.
And it was incredible.
Yeah.
I was actually really surprised that the job stories, because it's so specific to the context and the situation, and I gave it 3 job stories actually, to give it more of a...
So is a job story like situation based?
Yeah, it's all situation based. And it gave it's situation-based and almost like role-based.
Yeah, right.
I'm a caregiver.
So
I'm
moving
a patient.
beyond like traits and like, you know,
Yeah, it's less about
this height and
traits. Yeah,
blonde hair and blah, blah, blah.
right.
You know?
It's about like I'm a caregiver, and I have these situations that I'm in where this X happens, and I'm really struggling.
Yeah,
right.
right.
And I write the job story around that. I'm a patient, and every time this thing happens, I'm confused or I struggle to understand this thing, and I write a job story around that. And so I wrote a few job stories. I gave it to my prototype assistant now that I've trained.
Sure.
So I've trained all these things.
Yeah.
Did like hundreds of lines of instructions and all these projects. Pretty insane.
Yeah.
But I'm obsessive compulsive around it.
Yeah.
And and out came. It was the first time I actually did it to this extent. And the job story was amazing.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've connected a job story so directly to a potential, like this is what it could be. This is what it could do for people.
Yeah.
It was, and I uploaded also, I actually had access to actual data that we could use in this kind of prototype.
Sure.
It made it more real.
Yeah.
It was incredible. It was magical. So the job story
shout out to giving AI all your context.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's going to be used against me in about 5 years, but that's fine. Anyway, so yeah. So I would say the job story for me, when I did that, I now write job stories for every single thing we do. I actually did it this morning for something else we've been talking about. I wrote 3 job stories from 3 different perspectives, not based on attributable stuff, but based on contextual, situational things.
Okay.
Gives you a lot of like, here's the universe we're playing in.
I like that.
Right? Here's the universe of problems that are existing. Here's why people might want that problem solved. Here's what they get when that problem is solved. Here's the end benefit. The ultimate end benefit, right? Not the feature end benefit, but the ultimate user
experience,
end benefit, right? Like, what are they going to walk away with? What's the relief that you're going to give them when they consume this job story?
Yeah.
And when I looked at the prototype that got spat back out of me and I iterated on, it was incredible. It was so like one-to-one to me that I'm never not going to use job stories again when I do these exercises. So,
we have 2 last questions. I'll take this one first and then finish with the other one. But so you mentioned before about how you say it's important to go niche. And people do agree. And I think a lot of people in startups sort of know that, right? You want to niche down first. Right. But when you're looking into investment, VCs, angels, other mentors perhaps, how do you like go about convincing them that like your niche is the one that can become the ocean before it actually is one?
Yes, absolutely. So by niche, I don't mean cafes for cat owners. Right. This is not the niche I'm talking about.
Sure.
The niche I'm talking about, and you shouldn't be blind to a market. It's not like you're just like, oh, I'm going to ignore all that stuff and I'm just going to find like 25 random people and solve a problem, right? Like that's also not how it works.
Yeah.
By niche, I mean this concept of a wedge product, which means that you have a sense of a bigger vision, but you're not focused on the bit. Like, this is going to go somewhere, right? You're not going to run out of runway in about 2.5 months and go like, well, what's next? Like, you always have to know what's next.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility. By niche, though, I mean, just I do think that like if you find those first really heavy users and they give you a lot of feedback and they use your product and you mold it around enough people. Right? Like, you don't want to mold a product around 3 people, but you mold it around enough people. You don't want to finalize it too early, but you'll then come out of that process and then you can look at the larger market. And when you do a market sizing, then it's more realistic. It's more defensible, right? A VC can go like, all right, so instead of the conversation being, I'm going to capture 0.001% of this fantasy market, you can say, we have 50 users, then we went to 100, then we went to 500, then we went to 5,000. And as long as they can see that path, they can understand scale and growth. Right? As long as you go, when you have 50 users, it's easy now to say, oh, what's the next 100?
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Once you have the next 100, you can say, what's the next 1,000 or 5,000? When you take that stepped sort of laddered approach, it's really easy to say, like, what's that next set of users? How do we keep expanding? And once you expand like 2 or 3 times, that's really what I think, in my personal opinion, I could be totally wrong, but just from my sort of being in it and what I see, once you do that sort of 2 or 3 times, you can see the growth trajectory.
Yeah.
You can do the math.
Yeah, because what's not to believe that you can do it a fourth
The
time?
math works out.
If you've done it 3
go
times,
from 50 to like 500 to 5,000, right? And all the other things are lining up, right? If you then pour $1 million into that on top of the 5,000, top of the sort of like scales of growth you've already achieved yourself, the math works out, right? The total addressable market just reveals itself. It does. It will. You should know what your market is.
I think like Hugh says in VC Tech Breakdown, traction normally solves all issues.
It solves all issues. It solves all issues. Traction and also a sense of trajectory. So instead of growth, I think of trajectory. What is the trajectory we're on? And does it multiply itself? Right? And if it does, then mathematically, I'm not a math genius, but generally that scale and growth almost reveals itself. Like, right. And also like when you go to a VC, and a VC, somebody who's thinking about giving you money says, here's 10 million. What are you going to use it for?
Right.
If you just come in and say, here's a total, 0.01, blah, 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 you have no idea what you're going to use that money for. You're dead in the water. So
people want to see 5 to 10 year
So what's
plans.
the point? But growth. Also like they want to see like, do you need operational money? Right? Do you need to build out tool sets?
What's that money being
used for? Do you need marketing money? Are you ready to turn on the marketing funnel? Right? Is it sales and acquisitions you need? Who are you going to hire? How much do they cost? What are they going to do? What clients are they going to go after? Right? How big are those deals? How much revenue are you going to get? What's your cost of acquisition? Right? Like you learn those things through doing those first initial rounds of 50, 500, 5,000. That's what you learn. Right? So when you come to somebody, you can be like, I know my business. I know my scale. I know when I add fuel to this fire, hopefully it's not a fire, but I add fuel to this rocket ship, I know exactly where that rocket ship is going. Right? And you don't really when you just sort of do that generally. I'm operating in some total addressable market. Right? So
our last question for the day, thank you very much for staying with us, everyone. How do you go about balancing a solution with how much people are going to pay for it, right? Like I think that price question is always a tricky issue.
Pricing strategy is a whole different thing.
It's rough, right?
I'm not a pricing expert. It's hard. You also sometimes, to be honest, have to figure out how to incentivize early people to use your product, unfortunately. Like we see that all the time.
So you might play around with some promotions or discounts, something like that.
It as a long-term strategy, I don't think it's great because you just get coupon chasers essentially. But if you're doing it early on as a tool to kind of learn and get early traction and sort of figure out different numbers and what makes people come back, that's fine. I think pricing, your pricing, somebody wrote a really amazing article about pricing, and I wish I could remember all of it. It was too smart for me. But pricing, a lot has to do with people's willingness to pay, what the market can hold, what competitors are doing, the value of your solution over others in the marketplace, the perceived value. I mean, all those things come into play. I'm not a pricing expert, but I think if you're sort of thinking about that, you should get someone who is. When you're finally also doing your kind of like, all your financials and stuff like that. Like, again, I don't do that. I have to know those things to a certain respect, but pricing also depends on is it a subscription service?
Yeah.
Is it monthly, yearly, like all those things? So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you for all the questions, everyone, and thank you for staying engaged. A big thank you to Chaz again for coming in.
I hope any of this helped anyone.
I think so. But if you are interested, we do have a really awesome event on tonight about the SaaSpocalypse.
Yes.
So feel free to come around to that and watch us discuss whether or not these products that you are building with this advice are dead, or if you should be doing something else, or how you might actually go about navigating that. I don't think it's dead, by the way. But anyway, with that being said, Chaz will now do some mentoring with some of our Clubhouse members. So if you do want to get involved in some of the in-person mentoring next time, feel free to join our community and take a look at what the Clubhouse can offer. It will actually also be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the Lunch and Learns at 4K. With timestamps for your viewing convenience.
Cool.
So thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you at our next one, which should be in about 2 weeks' time, okay? Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.